students from Franklin to Swan. That's my own personal feeling. That school will be closed. And the people of Franklin are going to lose their local control of the school that they're proud of, and they should be. It's one of the lowest per capita schools in Vermont, and it also has some of the highest ratings for students in Vermont.
In regard to the new federal legislation, it moved from No Child Left Behind to what's called Every Student Succeed Act, and the jury's still out on the assessments. We took the SBAC, which is Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortia. Didn't count this year because we're in a transition year, and we don't know what's going to be the new measures for the future. So in answer to your question, we don't know that yet. The Agency of Ed and the State Board of Education are in the process of working with schools to figure out how to measure and how to assess whether schools are meeting the compliance issues around standards. But I have to say to you that SBAC is only one assessment of how we measure whether or not students are successful. And I won't say it's a small and I won't say it's a large measure, but there are many other ways that teachers are on top of how children are learning. And the one to pay the closest attention to is the local assessment that teachers are using in the class. They come together in professional learning communities on a weekly basis. They look at how students are doing. They set measures for how students move in the future. So that's really the one to be paying attention to, and that's not reported on the report card. So times are changing in response to your question.
And good evening again, everyone. Richard Copperthwaite, Northwest Access TV with Elaine Ezerins from the St. Albans Messenger. More Town Meeting Day coverage, Town Meeting Day 2016. And on the line, we're happy to have Shelley LaRush, the Town Treasurer in Highgate. Shelley, are you there?
I am here.
Greetings. Hey, I was up in Highgate for a while today. Had I known you were going to be one of our guests, I would have tried to track you down, but thanks for calling in.
Thanks for having us.
I was here this morning for the school budget, made it through pretty easily. A lot of questions about Act 46. But tell us, let's go right to the budget. I know it sounded like a likely spirited debate on your town budget with the capital budget plan. Part of it, how did that fare?
It was an eye-opener for most of our residents.
Really?
We've been planning this for over a year now.
Yeah.
Not a lot of involvement throughout that process. So today was the first time that many residents had seen the full plan.
Mm-hmm. And what they think? Mixed reactions, or?
I think they want to ease into it. So $400,000 of the $441,999 was cut from the budget.
Really?
Okay.
400,000 was cut?
Yes.
Wow.
So what were the money that was cut? What was the money that was cut?
Well, it was allocated in different areas for ADA modifications to the town hall.
Huh.
The library needed an upgrade of computers and server.
Mm-hmm.
The fire department was looking for some funds to be set aside for new personal protection gear and a ventilation system. Also to purchase a new fire truck, which will be coming down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And the highway department was looking for some road safety improvement money.
So another way to word that question, what's the money that wasn't cut? The money that wasn't cut,
Yeah.
what will that, no, your question was fine. What will that be used for, the money that wasn't cut out of that?
It will actually all stay in the fire department. They will get new personal protection gear.
Uh-huh.
And the rest will go to the towards the purchase of a future fire truck.
Interesting.
Okay.
So what do you think? Presumably will the select board try to get some of that money? Do you think this issue will come up again next year when they'll try to get some?
This will be a reoccurring.
Okay.
The select board has adopted this capital improvement plan.
Okay.
So every year it will be revisited, money will be reallocated, and it will be amended, I'm sure. But now the town knows what to expect, and maybe we can get some better input and plan.
Interesting. Well, I think the expectation was there would be pretty spirited discussion about that. I mean, pretty much a new thing for most of the residents, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. How? What about any other town issues worth talking about? Any Any defeats of any other articles?
Everything else went through.
Is
So
that right?
nothing was cut from the general fund, nothing was cut from the highway fund. It was, the rest of the day was pretty well smooth sailing.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I was here in the morning. The school budget passed. Some questions, but passed about 2-1. And a lot of questions. School Superintendent Winton Goodrich, who we'll be talking to later, had answered a lot of questions about Act 46, certainly.
Yes, he did.
School consolidation. So Shelley, you took over for what, Tom Racine last
Yes.
year?
In June.
In June. Tom being the longtime town treasurer. So how do you like your job?
I do still like my job.
That's good. You have a good crew up there. Wendy Dusablon, of course. In fact, was she reelected today?
She was,
Without opposition, and
without opposition.
Heidi Bridge-Valenta is a pretty good friend of mine. I'm sure you feel she's doing a good job up there in the select board.
Yeah, fantastic grant writer. Absolutely.
Hey, quick question. You did, boy, it's funny. We talked about the lack of contests. In fact, there was an open seat on the Highgate Select Board that nobody filed for. Perchance, was anybody elected on write-ins to that seat or not?
There was a lot of write-ins. I cannot give you an unofficial answer at this time, but
Okay.
there were many write-ins.
Many write-ins?
Okay.
And Elaine, you want to throw in anything on Highgate here?
So was there any opposition to like certain parts of the capital investments that people were really against?
I think it was the amount of money that we were trying to set aside as a whole
Yeah.
versus the plan itself.
Okay.
Huh.
Because the plan itself was adopted, it's just going to be implemented along the years.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, it looked like, I know the school budget vote had about 50 more voters this year than last year on the school budget at least. You think that was maybe because of the later discussion on the capital budget or the presidential primary? It looked like a little bigger turnout today. Any thoughts on that?
My thoughts would be from speaking with Wendy earlier that there's always a larger turnout when it is a presidential
Guess that
election.
makes sense, yeah. Anyway, Highgate elected a new select board member today, at least one who did file. I don't have his name in front of me.
Joshua LaRock.
Thank you. So he's on the board.
Yes.
And again, at this moment, I guess we're not clear. There may be an open seat. We'll see when they tally up the write-ins.
Yep, they were still counting the write-ins when I came over.
Okay, very good. Anything else to report on Highgate?
I think that's all.
Hey, well, thanks. We appreciate you checking in. Thanks for a good report, and good luck to the town of Highgate.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a good night.
Thanks, Shelley. Goodbye. And we appreciate getting some good, solid information there. How about Enosburg, Elaine? You had some info from the Enosburg town meeting?
So we have official results from Enosburg that everything passed, all the articles, the budget. So the budget was, let me find my files.
And also approval for what, a fire truck and also a highway truck?
Yes, all of those budgets were
Okay.
approved. Okay, here it is. So the budget was about 11.83 million for the school budget, and that was a anticipated tax increase of less than a cent. So that was approved, as well as the town was asking voters to approve about 964,000 for the general fund, and that was approved. The highway department was down about 4,000, and they were asking voters to approve a half-penny increase in the tax rate for the next 5 years to use on conservation projects. That
Let
was
me
approved.
just mention some of our highlights for folks just checking in. We don't have official vote numbers, but again, the unification vote, the school consolidation, school merger vote in the St. Albans area, arguably the biggest issue at stake today in Franklin County, obviously for folks around here probably, did pass. Unofficially, the word is it did pass. It needed to be approved in St. Albans City, St. Albans Town, and Fairfield, and the word is it did unofficially pass. And that was certainly a big issue. You folks certainly gave a lot of attention. Probably feel like you spent about half your life on that issue.
I think Michelle definitely felt that. She
Yeah.
wrote a lot of articles trying to explain the breakdown about
Yeah.
the tax benefits for each town and just what unification would look like. So people really had an understanding before they voted.
Yeah, there's certainly a lot of letters to the editor, some of which I was reading today. Certainly got a lot of Mostly pro, I suspect both ways, but it seemed like mostly pro editors have made it into the paper.
Well, we were actually surprised the week before town meeting day. We really didn't get as many as we thought about the Act 46. We thought there were going to be a larger number, but I think people have been speaking about it for the last couple months, so everything's been said. It's just kind of waiting for the vote to happen.
Yeah. So again, unofficially, the unification vote, St. Albans City, St. Albans Town, and Fairfield was approved. St. Albans Town, the school budget, though, again, unofficially went down to defeat.
Right. It went down, and I'm a little surprised about it because even though the budget went up about a little over 3%, excuse me, the tax rate went down 1 cent. And I'm not really sure why it was not approved, but I could maybe guess that in the town report, the 3-year prior comparison showed that the spending per pupil was above the threshold, but that isn't correct because they changed the numbers once the cap came in, and so they actually were underneath the cap. So
that might have been just kind of bad luck on their part, possibly.
Yeah, people might have read the initial numbers. We published in the Messenger that it changed, but people might have not noticed and kind of made their decision based on the old numbers. So
right. Want to mention again, there was a town clerk's race in Sheldon, and the longtime incumbent Paulette Bocash was defeated by Kim Dufresne. So we have a new town clerk in Sheldon. And again, we're still waiting for results from around the county. Again, presidential preference primary, of course, Bernie Sanders, the presumed big winner in Vermont. Sanders obviously hoping to pick up at least a few other states, but on the Republican side, it sounds like Donald Trump and John Kasich, the Ohio governor, were the top two folks. Of course, Vermont's, I love it. Every once in a while, I'll run into someone who talks about all the registered Democrats in Vermont, and I say, hey, hate to tell you, there are no registered Democrat, because of course Vermont is not registration by party.
Yeah, exactly. You show up and you pick. Do you want to be Republican or Democratic today?
I'm sure some people were unhappy today because you had to ask for, if you wanted to pick up a presidential primary ballot, you had to ask for a Republican or Democratic ballot.
Right.
I think in the general election, typically you grab, they give you all the ballots and you discard the ones you're not using. So I'm sure some people probably weren't happy to have to even say anything today, but I think that was the national parties were responsible for that back some years ago. I don't know. Yeah,
and I don't really see the sense in that because the results are going to happen anyway. Yeah. So we're going to know who was voted for in the end. So whether you say Republican or Democratic doesn't really matter. And I know some people who are going to vote Republican, but in the general election they're going to vote Democratic.
Sure.
So it doesn't really prove anything, I don't think.
Yeah. So again, I asked you before, what else did you pick up for town meeting? Anything strike you that kind of really stood out about it, or not exactly?
I would say that the lack of races stood out.
Surprising to me.
Yeah, there were races.
St. Albans Town.
Yep.
Bill
Nyhan ran unopposed, and he was a former selectman, but
succeeding Brent Palmer, who didn't run again, and Bruce Cheeseman reelected in the town. But yeah, I think everybody I talked to was surprised there were no contests, especially in St. Albans Town. And we should mention again in St. Albans City. Here in the city, Mayor Liz Gamache reelected to a third 2-year term, and the city councilors Timothy Hawkins in Ward 1, Jim Pelkey in Ward 2 reelected without opposition, and Sue Krupp, the city clerk treasurer, reelected without opposition. But Swanton also, which we haven't talked about, no contests in Swanton.
No.
And Highgate had mentioned not only no contests, at least on the municipal side, but also there was a select board seat that nobody filed for.
Right.
So unless somebody picked up about 30 write-in votes today, I assume the select board will be in position where they can appoint. I assume that's what would happen.
Yeah,
a little surprising. Pretty quiet on the.
It was just in Richford that there were races, Georgia and Alberg, and of course, actually for Bernard Savage's position, it's someone running unopposed. So that's only for the remaining 1-year term, and then there were 2 races in there, but 4 open seats.
Yeah, that's a lot of seats.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty much a whole new board almost.
Yeah.
So.
Well, big election year. I mean, town meeting day kind of starts off what's going to be a very active election year. Kind of feel bad for the statewide contests. Kind of the whole Bernie thing, the presidential thing, has kind of overshadowed some of the statewide contests. But obviously, as time goes on, we'll be hearing more about that.
Right.
The Vermont primary, boy, I hate summer primaries. I guess they feel like they have to put some distance between the primary and the November general election. But August 9th, just kind of these mid to late summer primaries doesn't help turnout, but that's the way it is. So
I just hate waiting.
yeah.
You know, you have so many states voting today, and then you're kind of just waiting for more results of, okay, is it closer, is it not, what are the results, and you have to look at polls to kind of get your answers, which, you know, they fluctuate all the time, so.
Anyway, but yeah, so big day, but Super Tuesday, Vermont part of that, Vermont, Massachusetts, and New England, I guess, 10 other states, but yeah, busy day today, then some more primaries a week from today, then a week after that, but today was certainly a biggie.
And you definitely saw on social media leading up to Super Tuesday, I have a lot of friends and family in New England, and everyone was just really reminding people to get their absentee ballots or, you know, just go out and vote and show your support, because there's been so much talk on Facebook about, you know, Bernie and Trump and Hillary and who's going to win, and I think people really, you know, put their opinions to votes, which is nice to see. Yeah,
we're about to go to a video. So just talk about social media just for a second, Elaine. Do you check that every day? I mean, is that a
oh yeah, I'm on social media way too much.
Is that right?
Yeah,
but it's part of your job. I mean, you really need to do that.
Yeah, and I subscribe to a lot of different news channels on social media. So. Okay,
we've got another video from Team USA. Let's go to our video from Team USA. We'll be back.
Day is different in each town, a little bit different. For our town, they decided a number of years ago to have it Australian ballot, which is a real complicated name for basically it's a ballot. You're going to go to the polls on March 1st or before if you'd like to early vote and vote on the things that are pertinent to the town at that time. So it's our time. And in some towns, they actually have a meeting. They have a bunch of people get together in usually the school gym, and you talk about issues and the town budget. And possibly school, but most towns, even like Georgia to our south, they actually vote the municipal budget on the floor. They vote yes or no, and they talk about different issues and different line items. For St. Albans town, we do it all on ballot. So at that point, you're electing some of your local officials, including select board, lister office. Can't remember who else is on there, but that's on our ballot, and our municipal budget, and other things like do the voters want to authorize a fire truck and a DPW plow truck? And things like that. There's only 9 articles. One of them is voting all the elected officials. A couple of them are just budget questions. And then we are asking voters to approve a tanker for the fire department, a plow truck for the DPW, the Department of Public Works, and a beach rake for cleaning up and maintaining during the summer season our beach. And then a tractor to pull that. So those are that's a highlight. Unfortunately, it's not very exciting because most of those things are like regular items, but we do ask taxpayers to vote and approve larger ticket items, so that's why they're on there. My job really entails getting the budget ready, so I work with the select board starting in the fall of 2015 to prep our budget. So that's one of their biggest policy decisions for the select board is to prepare their budget. So when we prepare for town meeting day, I work with the select board, and the town clerk, Anna, works as the elected official. She's actually legally the highest elected official. She's the election official in town. So she runs the actual business that is town meeting, the election, the voting totals, and she reports them on the state website as required. So it's a combination of different departments. We really encourage participation, and voting is your voice. You know, I mean, it seems a little cliche, and I know that's a little motto that the Secretary of State's using, but without that feedback, we have nothing to go on. You know, we think we're doing a good job. Very infrequently do people come forward and tell us what they like about things. They generally will come forward when they're unhappy, just tendency, people tend to do that. So we want you to vote either way, but if you don't vote, we have no idea what's going on. So we have, as a town, tried to reach out to people in different ways because voters come in all shapes, sizes, and ages. So we have a Facebook page now, and at Town of St. Albans, you can follow us on Facebook. We have over 900 people following us now. We have an electronic newsletter we send out once a month. We have a website. And so we're trying to reach out to people to get feedback, but we don't always get that. So we appreciate public input, and I know people are busy, so we're just trying to reach them in all different facets.
Town meeting day is a little bit different depending on what town you're in. With regards to the city, it's where residents can come in and vote on the articles that are on the ballot. For some towns, people actually come in and spend the whole day, and they'll talk about the issues and then usually do a vote by raise of their hand. So this is an interesting town meeting day here in the city of St. Albans. We have our normal things like our ballot items and the treasurer and the clerk. We also have two other things that are not normally on the ballot. We have one that's a city sidewalks budget for $4.9 million, and we also have the Act 46 consolidation on the ballot also. For me, I feel if you vote, that gives you a really good reason to complain during the year. So usually if someone calls me up and starts talking about some issues, I'll say, hey, did you vote? And thankfully, a majority of the time it is yes.
And good evening again, everyone. Richard Cobrathwaite, Northwest Access TV, Channel 16, Town Meeting Day 2016 coverage. Happy to have back on the set Michelle Monroe. Hey,
Thanks
Michelle.
for having me back.
And again, the unification vote in the St. Albans area, we're getting some numbers. You want to give us some numbers on that? Pretty, boy, overwhelming approval.
Overwhelming approval. We have numbers so far for Fairfield and St. Albans City. We are hearing that the margin is similar in St. Albans Town, but Fairfield 376 to 1 in favor of reunification, and in the city 1,070 to 299.
And again, as you said, we're hearing the town, St. Albans Town, also decisive approval.
Are also
which a bit of a surprise to me. I think we both thought the town, maybe some doubt about the town, and maybe even a little doubt about Fairfield. Yeah. Interesting. I guess money talks. With if the projected tax savings are real, we'll see how it plays out over the years. But that speaks to a lot of people, I got to think.
I think that does, and I think in Fairfield, one of the things that was also tipping the margin when you went to the forums, folks there really were talking about the fact that this was a chance for them to improve education for their kids.
Just get some more like foreign language in particular.
Foreign language was one. In recent years, they had hired a math interventionist to help improve math instruction in the school and to work with students who were struggling with math, and they had to cut that position, which the board was very unhappy about doing, and Fairfield has had the problem in Fairfield has been that they've been slowly dropping students, and that drives up your cost per pupil, and that in turn drove up their tax rate in some cases by really large margins, and that was forcing the board to make a lot of tough decisions in terms of what they were going to do for staffing wise. Like they combined their technology coordinator and their librarian, for example, when the librarian retired, and her hours had already been reduced to 28 a week. Wow. And so it was, they had to make a lot of tough choices over the last few years, and I think that voters in Fairfield really saw this as a chance for them to be able to regain some of the things that they've lost.
Interesting. On the other side, and I'm sure people have concerns, we don't know exactly how this will play out. Some concern in Fairfield that in time that they might lose their elementary school. Did that issue come up at all, or not really?
I didn't really hear that too much at the forums. I did hear that there were questions asked about that, and it just wasn't. I understand the concern, but that's not really an issue in Franklin County.
And certainly nothing
none of our schools are that
would
small.
happen anytime soon.
No, they would have
that small a school.
They would have 230 students that they would have.
What are they going to do with that?
You can't put 230 students into either city or town or both. Yeah, they just don't have the room. Yeah, so it's not a practical thing. And Franklin County is the youngest county in the state, and we are.
Is that
we
right?
are. We're the youngest county in the state, and we have the highest percentage.
No thanks to me, but okay.
And we have the highest percentage of people under the age of 18.
Really?
A lot of our schools are actually growing. Fletcher, Sheldon, St. Albans Town has always been stable. They saw a slight dip this year. St. Albans City, Berkshire. We're seeing our towns, Highgate, we're seeing growth,
the population,
not
with
loss.
Vermont losing some population between 2010 and 2012 or whatever, or 2012 and 2014. Franklin County is still a growing
Growing
county.
concept, because we get that spillover from Chittenden, and that really is a boon for us. And so we get a lot of young families who are commuting to Chittenden County for work, and that's a real benefit. We are not losing kids in our schools for the most part.
Back to St. Albans Town, some school officials, school board members, there certainly were some, I think, vocal opponents of the unification. Their main arguments were?
There was concern that bringing equity to Fairfield and improving instruction in Fairfield would take resources out of St. Albans Town. There were concerns that St. Albans Town doesn't have any debt, that its building is in good shape, and that Fairfield needs about $2 million in work just to bring its electrical system up to code. And the city school doesn't need any work, but it does have an outstanding bond because they did a great deal of work in the last few years. So now city school's in great shape, but they do have a debt payment there. And so there was concern of we're going to be paying for other schools. But because Vermont is a statewide system, our tax rates are all in the end based on what everybody is spending collectively. And so you're already paying for those things. And as the tax commissioner, Mary Peterson, said to me, you're not going to be paying any more just through because you unified than you're paying now. If town and Fairfield are already paying for city schools debt as part of the statewide tax system, and that won't change.
Yeah, boy, as I think about it, it's interesting. We're spending a lot of time, understandably, on the unification vote, a vote that came very close to not happening.
Yes.
With the initial vote against bringing it to the people, to residents on town meeting day.
Yes.
Interesting. I mean, the initial vote was 5-4 not to put it out to voters.
And then there was a lot of pushback, and Tate Brooks decided to revisit his vote.
Was the key change vote there?
Yes.
And was the only change vote?
It was the only change vote. Everyone else held firm, and the other votes against were Nilda Ganella French, the chair of the BFA board, Paul Borbo, chair of the SATEC board, and the two other SATEC board members who were on the study committee.
Interesting. Okay, some other highlights. Sheldon, again, a town clerk's race in Sheldon. We have a new town clerk.
We have a new town clerk in Sheldon, Paulette Bocash, who served the town of Sheldon for 30 years.
Wow.
Lost her seat to Kim Dufresne earlier today. We also have gotten in new results from Sheldon on their school budget, which it's a $6 million budget that passed by a very large margin.
Okay. And again, the only school budget we're aware of, again, we don't have a lot of results, but the St. Albans Town school budget, the SATEC budget, I guess unofficially went down.
Unofficially.
May have been hurt by just kind of some late breaking news on the school financial front.
There was, because all of the schools went into the budget season with a cap placed on how much they could increase their per pupil spending. The anticipation, and then after the legislature passed those caps, the healthcare premiums for teachers went up 7.9%. So the expectation was that Shap Smith, the Speaker of the House, had said, well, to address that, we're going to increase the caps by 0.9%. So a lot of schools, and SATEC was not the only school to do this, then budgeted up a little bit above their cap, anticipating that it was going to go up 0.9%. And so, but that hadn't happened as of town meeting day, not as of town meeting day, as of the time when they had to put together their town report.
Which is typically mid-January or so.
Yeah, so the information in the town report indicating that the tax rate was going to go up was not accurate. And so voters voted were going in without the correct information in front of them about the impact on the tax rate. Because in fact, once the legislature decided to end the caps, or readjusted what they were doing with the caps so that the caps were no longer impacting St. Albans Town, that meant that their tax rate was actually going to drop a cent without the punishment of having exceeded their cap.
Interesting.
It's a very complex.
He's ready to, I guess we've got Mr. Todd Pritzky checking in from Fletcher right now. Todd, how are you?
I'm doing all right. How about you tonight?
Hey, good to talk to you. We seem to good enough to check in every year at this time, which we appreciate.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun.
So give us some color on the Fletcher Town meeting today.
Well, it was not overly contentious this year.
No.
We didn't have a whole lot of stuff up for a great deal of debate, but we did have probably our biggest article was a request by the board to increase, really to double our road budget from $75,000 to $150,000, and there was some debate about that, about what it would get us with the deteriorating quality of our roads, and that surprisingly was overwhelmingly supported then by voice vote. We had a smattering of nays out there, but that actually did really well. And then when we got to the budget itself, it was pretty anticlimactic and was unanimous. So that was kind of a refreshing thing. And then the school budget passed 87-17, which was like a 5-to-1 margin.
Wow.
Usually we're about 2-to-1 in support, so I was actually pretty astonished by that as well.
Huh.
So it was, I mean, we had some good debate here and there, but there was not a lot of the passion that we've had in some of our more contentious years.
Interesting. Any contests in Fletcher, Todd?
We had to fill the remaining year of Elaine Sweet's term as town clerk, because she retired back in September, and her assistant town clerk was our interim. The board appointed her last year, and she ran unopposed then. I actually nominated her for the position, and then no one else stood, so we cast one ballot for her. And then Annette Kalinowski, my colleague on the board, chose not to stand for re-election this year. And so what's unusual for us is we didn't really have anyone obviously waiting in the wings who wanted to run, and so we were kind of wondering if that was going to happen. We were going to have anybody available, and we ended up then with two candidates, Brad Schwartz, who had been on the board back in the 90s, and a relative newcomer, Jesse Weems, who moved into town back in 2013, and Jesse actually won the seat 50-43.
Interesting.
So we have some new blood on the board, and means I'm no longer the youngest person on the board at 46.
Interesting. You've been on the board for how long?
This is my 4th year, so I'm just kind of 1 year into my 2nd term.
Interesting. So roads a big issue. So roads in Fletcher not in great shape?
No, and in fact, Dan Connor, our representative in the House, came to the board meeting the night before town meeting, and he got an earful from us about state aid and how the formulas have not kept up. The funding formulas have not kept up with the increased costs of paving roads. And what we've decided to do actually is kind of that strategic disinvestment of grinding roads and building a good base. And as monies come in, and hopefully some stuff that Leahy's office had announced that was part of the stimulus might help us, $1.5 billion, I think, is what the state was awarded. But hopefully will trickle down to us, and over the next few years we'll be able to try to build some things back up to where they need to be. And even this amount that we asked for, doubling our budget, is not enough to do what we really need to do, but we were hoping it's kind of a down payment on a long-term process.
Interesting. Michelle, anything for Todd?
Pardon me?
I was just talking to my colleague here, Michelle.
No, I saw that your per pupil spending was up in Fletcher. How was the school budget itself? Was the total spending up, or? Actually,
total spending itself was down a smidge. Like we're talking like $14,000 or something like that. And some of that was just based on kind of our fluctuating demographics of how many kids we have leaving the system and how the tuition changes are happening and things like that. And some other cuts in a few places here and there. I think. Building maintenance was the one area that actually some costs went up a little bit, but on the whole it was actually kept pretty low, and so we are still below the state average for the equalized per pupil spending, but that has gone up a little bit. I think in Franklin County now I think we might be the 2nd highest if I recall, but yeah, still the budget itself actually just kind of shook out as being a little bit lower than last year's.
Todd, much talk about the presidential primary in Fletcher. Did that get people, going?
We had, about 376 people show up, I think, this year just for the primary, which was more than what we had for town meeting. It was 143, I think, people checked in. Trump squeaked out a 30-29 lead over Kasich with some number of other people getting a couple votes here and there, and Bernie ran away with it 256-21 over Hillary.
Is that 256-21?
Yeah, and O'Malley got a vote.
Is that one vote for Martin?
That was it. And Rocky didn't get anything, so.
That's right. Rocky was on the ballot also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. So what do you think? Still town meeting day hanging in there? Still some life to town meeting day?
Yeah, this was actually a fairly decent turnout for us because we usually clock in around maybe 100 voters showing up. So 143 was a good year, especially given that we didn't really have a lot. We didn't have a bond vote for the new town office. We didn't have a school bond vote coming up or anything like that. And it was. I thought there was a good energy. Everyone was kind of. Obviously looking over the reports and asking questions and whatever, but it was a very positive kind of constructive feel to everybody's questions this year.
Well, very good. Hey, thanks for a great report. Good luck with all the things going on in Fletcher.
All right, thanks very much.
Thank
we'll
you very
talk to
much.
You guys next year.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Excellent reporting from Fletcher Selectman Todd Pritzky. Anything you want to jump into that we haven't perhaps touched on, Michelle?
Well, listening to Mr. Pritzky reminded me that we do have the Sheldon primary results, which were similar on the Democratic side. Hillary Clinton received 24 votes to Bernie Sanders 215, with one for Rocky and one for Martin O'Malley.
Well, Rocky did get a vote out of Sheldon.
He did, and on the Republican side, John Kasich was third with 37 votes. Marco Rubio was second with 39 votes, and Mr. Trump won the day in Sheldon with 57 votes.
Is that right? Interesting.
Ted Cruz managed 14 and Dr. Carson 9.
Interesting. Well, based on just very few results from Franklin County, I suspect Mr. Trump sounds like he's probably en route to a win in Vermont.
It does seem that way.
And maybe a sweep aside from maybe Texas. Maybe Ted Cruz can pick up Texas. Okay, I think we're ready for an official Michelle rundown here. And I'll we'll turn things over to you, Michelle. Thank you, and I'll catch up with you a little later. Give folks a lot of good info out here.
Okay, we have results so far on the Act 46 merger for Franklin Central. Fairfield voted 376 to 152 in favor, and in the city, 1,070 people in favor versus 299 opposed. Enosburg Town Meeting, all articles passed, and including the purchase of a new pumper truck for $450,000. That was approved 386 to 57, and a highway truck was approved 180 to 62. In Highgate Town Meeting, all articles passed. However, they did remove approximately $400,000 from their capital budget and plan. In Highgate's school budget of about $5 million was approved 97 to 54, and that Highgate is actually seeing reduced per pupil spending. Their per pupil spending was down 5%. And all articles passed in Sheldon, including with 74 people supporting the purchase of a building for a historical museum and 32 opposed. Mark Churchill was elected a new selectman with 97 votes over Paul Talley's 23. Kimberly Dufresne is the new town clerk with 76 votes, defeating Paulette Bocash, the incumbent, who received 51. Sheldon's school budget was passed 302 to 80, and that budget's a $6 million budget. And in St. Albans Town, a surprise, their $11.1 million budget was defeated, 888 voters opposed to 814 voting in favor. In Swanton Village, all articles passed. And that is our results so far tonight. Hi, Elaine. Welcome back.
Nice to see you back.
So you covered the Swanton Village budget. So
Right.
could you give us a little rundown of what was approved in Swanton?
So everything was approved. In Swanton Village, they break it down. So you have the highway budget, you have the fire department budget. So in the breakdown, it was $114,000 for the general fund, $578,000 for the police department, a little over $450,000 for the highway department and $70,000 for the fire department. And this, if you round it out to be about $1.22 million, the overall tax rate increase was about 3 cents. So they approved all of those articles.
And the big surprise of the night so far is St. Albans Town's school budget.
Right.
Do you want to take one more crack at explaining for anyone who's just tuned in what the situation was that developed with the St. Albans Town budget?
Sure. So with the town budget, the town school budget, excuse me, it was up about a little over 3%, but the tax rate was actually down 1 cent because of the CLA. And so I think the reason that it was voted down was because a little bit of misinformation that, to no fault of the town, it happened so that they created a budget before the caps were readjusted. And so in the 3 prior year comparison in the town report, it said that they went over the cap, but in actuality they didn't. And so if someone had read the town report beforehand and didn't maybe read our articles or check in later, they might have thought that the budget went over the cap, but in actuality it didn't. So that could be a reason why it wasn't approved. I don't know the minds of the voters, so that's just a projection.
And Franklin Central Superintendent Kevin Dirth will be checking in later, so we'll be able to pick his brain a little bit about why that may have happened.
It was close. I looked at the numbers, about 888 to 815, I want to say, around there. So it was a close vote.
It was a close vote. And under Vermont law, they won't be able to bring back the exact same budget. So they will have to make some minor tweak to the budget before they can bring that back to voters, hopefully with a clearer explanation of the impact on the tax rate. And so we do have, actually calling in just a few minutes, Wynn Goodrich, who is the superintendent of Franklin Northwest. So you should all stay tuned for that. And so far, it appears that Mr. Trump is winning Franklin County.
Which I don't know it's not really surprising if you look at all the numbers across the country, everyone supporting him, about 30% to all the other candidates. But I did see a lot of posters for Kasich, so it could have gone either way, but we'll see.
And certainly we have one VP Vermont Public Radio poll that indicated that Trump was leading with about 35% of the vote in Vermont. Okay. But that was a small poll, just 895 people. And the percentage who said that they were voting in the Republican primary was even smaller. So, and no clear idea yet on how today's primary vote may have impacted voter turnout. I know that Secretary of State Jim Kondos was saying that he was expecting that the turnout would be up a little bit. They are seeing registration numbers increasing. There have been a lot of folks registering to vote in the this presidential election year.
We spoke with Shelley LaRoque earlier, and she was saying that just every primary, there's just a higher voter turnout. So I think that makes sense. And I think especially this year, it's been so heated, especially on social media, that I think there's more millennial voters coming out and supporting, whoever they decide. But I noticed that even when I voted in Burlington at 7 a.m., there was already 25 people in line. So that's when it starts. So there was definitely a lot of people voting.
And I know St. Albans City, with its renovations, was seeing a lot of folks coming in to vote ahead of time at City Hall.
Right, and they had a $4-point-something million allocation for sidewalks.
The $4.9 million sidewalk bond, which we have not yet heard what the results are there. But that was the big ticket item on the city's budget. And the city, in recent years, city voters have shown a real propensity to support sidewalks. But it'll be an interesting question whether they're willing to do that to the tune of $4.9 million over the next 25 to 30 years.
At least it's spread out.
It is spread out. And the tax impact would actually be phased in over 3 years is what they're hoping to do.
Okay. But we're also waiting on race results. There were races in Richford, there were races in Alburg, in Georgia, and we haven't heard anything about those. But it was surprising that there weren't any races in the town or in the city. Everyone ran unopposed.
Was there an open seat on the town select board, or is there a candidate for every seat? I think.
There was a candidate for every seat. That Bill Nyhan ran unopposed for Brent Palmer's position.
Okay.
And Bruce Cheeseman ran again unopposed as well. And he had posters up. He was the only one that I saw had posters up.
Hello, we have Scott Perry on the line.
Hello.
Hi, Scott. I'm afraid that they told me you were on the line, but they didn't tell me what town you're calling in from.
Calling in from Montgomery.
Oh, great. Thanks for calling in. And I understand you're the chair of the select board there.
Correct.
So what we all want to know is what happened with your town hall vote?
Town hall vote was a squeaker, and unfortunately we fell 2 votes short.
2 votes short.
2 votes.
And so
Yeah.
are you anticipating that you might bring this back again before voters?
We're going to have to wait and see. I think certainly there's an option for a revote within 30 days if a petition is raised. But we've got 3 new selectmen and women, and so that they need to weigh in as well. But we're still figuring out what our options are.
And as I understand it, we had a reporter who went and visited with you from the Messenger and toured your town hall. And my understanding is that that's a pretty tiny town hall, and that you really are in need of more space.
Right. Yeah. I mean, part of it's being driven by the vault, which is about 50 square feet and cram packed, and most other vaults in the area are about 5 times that big. And then we also have had some problems in the past with the basement flooding from the low water table, which limits what we can store down there as well. And half the building is leased to the post office to use, and so if we can't build something new and move to a larger facility, we're concerned that we'd have to end the lease to the post office, take over the whole facility, and that makes us nervous as well. So, we need to upgrade, and we need a lot more floor space than we have right now.
And my understanding from looking at your town report was that even with the funding for the new town hall, you were anticipating that your tax rate was going to drop in Montgomery.
Correct. For this year anyway, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you also had some other articles that were, or some other funding in your budget for infrastructure, as I recall.
Right, yeah. What we've done for many years here is try to put away a little bit of money in a number of reserve funds for specific purposes like equipment replacement and major infrastructure projects, and then building and capital improvement for the buildings in town. And we were basically, just the way the cash flow worked, we had more revenue than we would typically have, and so we kind of split the difference and put some of it into those reserve funds, or increased the amount we put into the reserve funds every year, and then used the rest to drop the tax rate down about 1.5 cents for the on the municipal side.
And also, could you tell me a little bit about those select board races? Did you have any races where people?
Yeah, that was probably the most time-consuming and kind of maybe raucous part of the day. We were wrapped up. We have been for several years now, usually around 1 o'clock. But probably the first couple hours of the meeting were spent on the select board elections, and it was probably a tsunami of younger folks, which was good to see, that have stepped up, as well as some of the old timers as well. And the first, I think on each one of the positions, we probably had 3 or 4 candidates and ended up having multiple ballots. So it turned into a series of lining up to cast your ballot and see how it sugared out. But it usually took around 3 or 4 ballots to get to the majority of the votes cast to actually elect someone.
Wow. Well, it is kind of exciting to see so many people wanting to get involved in their town government.
Right. Absolutely. And it's probably, I think, in terms of recent memory, it was hard for people to remember when it had been quite that competitive, I guess.
So could you tell us who the 3 new board members are?
Sure. One of them is Sarah Silva. She'll be filling out the remainder of a 2-year term, so it'll be a year. And Charlie Hancock will be taking a position, a 3-year term, and he's coming from the Planning Commission. And then a new guy, Colin Sorensen, is going to be taking one of the 2-year terms.
And what happened with your school budget? Do you have numbers?
We don't vote the school budget till next Monday.
Ah, that's right. Okay. Montgomery waits on the school budget. And there was one other thing I wanted to ask you about your zoning laws. You were putting some proposed changes to the town zoning.
Yeah, it was the
voters.
time in the cycle for zoning revisions. There was a new town plan adopted just recently, and these zoning changes were approved. I don't have the exact numbers, but it wasn't close. They were approved by a good margin, so that was good news.
And that makes you, I believe, the first town in Franklin County to create a river corridor zone in your...
I think we're among the first in the county. I don't know what other towns have done, but to adopt the state river corridor program, yeah.
And could you explain a little bit to our listeners about what that will do for your town in terms of protecting, reducing flooding risk? And
well, it's basically trying to provide a little bit more control on development in the areas that have traditionally been the areas where the rivers wander around. And the state worked with us to try to define those areas. We get input into saying, for example, in certain areas that we think we need to accept that, the more built-up downtown areas. But it's basically just an attempt to try to get a better grasp on development that can affect the watershed and the flooding. And the state is trying to get, I guess, a little bit more involved. And one of the benefits to the town, aside from just having to go through the heartbreak of all the destruction that can be caused, is to if there is ever an event, they will increase the amount of recovery aid that they can make available to you. But as an attempt to try to plan and to anticipate and develop smartly so you don't make the problems associated with the flooding that we have worse.
well, I'm very glad to hear that river corridor passed, and thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. We appreciate hearing from you, and we'll be watching closely to see what happens with your town hall plans.
Yeah, fourth time's a charm.
It has to be, right?
Right.
Thanks again, Mr. Perry.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. So we are also anticipating a conversation with Wynn Goodrich from Franklin Northwest, so please stay tuned for that. And was that a surprise vote, do you think, in Montgomery?
I think so. I guess I'm more of an optimist, so I kind of expect everything to get approved. But so far, Montgomery, the budget wasn't approved, and then also in St. Albans Town.
Yeah, well, in Montgomery, I think they haven't voted on their school budget, and the only thing that went down was that one item, which was they approved the budget overall.
The town hall.
Yep, it was just the town hall. And we are going to go to another video, which will show you the results, show you some of Sheldon's town meeting today.
I'd like to just step down as a select man, but I'd like to thank all the town people for supporting me for the years that I've been here. Thank you.
You hear that? I'd like to thank Jack for his 9 years on the board. It's been a pleasure to work with Jack. We've got through 3 or 4 projects. He was instrumental in brought a lot of expertise to the board on those projects. And, just like it's been a great board.
The results are in for town clerk for a 3-year period. There was a total of 127 votes cast. The actual voting total actually matched up to 127, so we all did well this time. It's 76 Kim Dufresne, 51 Paulette Bocash. It's always so much easier to run unopposed. I can relate to that.
I want to pause a moment here because the trustees, if they would stand up, the library trustees, please, Heather, here, Martha, Marie, Mary. We want to together recognize your librarians. Yvette Severance has been your librarian for 30-plus years, effective the end of 2015. And we were hoping she would be here so we could present her with flowers. She's not retiring, she's continuing. She went through modernizing of the library, and that library is a lively, wonderful place. And I'd just like you to stop in and say a thank you when the library is open for Yvette Severance, 30 years, your librarian. Thank you.
Something with this amount of money, I'd like to see on the ballot. Correct way of doing it. Can you hear me now? So with this kind of money, some people may be a little intimidated, others going forward against it. I'd like to see it on a ballot. I think it's more comfortable for some people when it's this kind of money.
So $40,000 is stakes for purchase and renovation. That includes all renovations that we're going to have to do to the building to make it usable for a museum. And if so, do we have contracts for that?
I don't know if anybody knows that.
What I also know is that in some cases, governmental agencies like a town could apply for a nonprofit status if they have a compelling reason to do so. And I think the Historical Society in Sheldon has been doing a fabulous job over the last few years of becoming more and more visible and really putting roots in the ground around activities that benefit our town. So the Historical Museum, what this will do is really up the ante for the Historical Society or Foundation to become a nonprofit. I think that there's a good chance that that can happen. And also apply for grants so that funding that happens today could be matched and we could get more funding that has nothing to do with the town costs.
And hello everyone, Richard Copperthwaite, Northwest Access TV with Elaine Ezerins. We're continuing with our town meeting coverage for 2016. Town polls have been closed now for a little over 2 hours. And on the phone we've got Winton Goodrich, the superintendent in the Franklin Northwest Supervisory Union. Mr. Goodrich, Richard Copperthwaite here and Elaine Ezerins next to me. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for checking in. I heard your presentation on Act 46. You had a few questions on Act 46 at the Highgate meeting today. I happened to be there for that. It was good. You kind of gave an evolution of educational governance in Vermont a little bit there.
Well, there are a lot of questions about the Act 46 law, both in Highgate and in Franklin. Not many questions in Sheldon.
Gotcha. And tell us again, you told the folks up there what the story was. You've got to, there will at least be a study in the supervisory union about a possible consolidation. Tell us, where are you at now, or where are you going to be headed with that?
Okay. Well, unlike our partners to the north and to the south,
yeah.
Who did a full-blown study and actually had votes today, we did we'll call it a slow-mo version, and rather than the 20,000 full and comprehensive study, we did an exploratory, which was a $5,000 study. Okay. And in April, the school boards in Franklin Northwest will come together after having had some deliberation at the local level. And in April, they'll decide whether or not to move forward with a full comprehensive study. It's called the 706 study. And it would be like the study that Franklin Northeast and Franklin Central completed.
Would you make a prediction? Do you think that'll happen, or hard to say?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
And I think we're more likely to do the study than not. And the impetus, certainly good to know the data, the background, just for our own purposes. But also we have to attest to the State Board of Education in November of 2017, like any other school district in the state or supervisory union, that if we don't do an Act 46 merger, we have to demonstrate to the state board why we shouldn't and why we can offer equity and efficiency and opportunities to our students. And so it makes sense to do a study, and that then gives us data rather than emotion. And that's really where our boards are. They're more inclined to have the data and then to make decisions after that.
Interesting. And let's talk school budgets. Again, I was in Highgate, about a 2-to-1 approval for the school budget. Sheldon approval. What about Swanton, Franklin, and MVU with the school budgets?
Well, Franklin was unanimous.
Wow.
Okay. That was a floor vote, no paper ballot.
Yeah.
And I would say there were 100 plus people there, maybe 125 or so. Highgate. Highgate was actually 94-54, so closer than we'd like it to be.
But still about 2-to-1, pretty decisive.
Yeah. And Sheldon was 302 yes, 80 no, so more convincing and more voters.
Yeah.
We're having a challenge. I'm actually sitting in the Village Complex in Swanton right now. Because of being the presidential year, we ran out of ballots.
Really?
So they had to run some fast duplication, and our machinery is slow. They don't think they'll be out of here until midnight or so, and that's both Swanton and MVU. So we're not going to know that for a few hours now.
Oh, is that right? That's in this. So they ran out of ballots, huh?
Yes.
So that great of a turnout.
Yes, very big turnout. I guess we far exceeded any anticipated numbers.
So Franklin, literally not a no vote. I mean, a unanimous voice vote for the Franklin budget.
I didn't hear one dissenting vote.
Really, that's impressive.
Well, it's a very unique community, and they treasure their school, and rightfully so. It's a very high-performing school and a very low-cost budget. So they've got a couple of ingredients for success here.
Yeah, I know Franklin pretty well, and you're right. The school means a whole lot to the folks in Franklin. Sounds like it's a school with an excellent reputation. That's impressive.
Yes.
Highgate, some questions on the Highgate budget. Connie James Biore, your Highgate School Board Chair, good detailed presentation on the budget, but it looked like the numbers were in pretty good shape for taxpayers, I guess, in Highgate.
Very good. They dropped the tax rate almost 6 cents. And that's unheard of. And what's unique about this, and it's not just in our communities, well, it may be, we have pretty stable enrollment numbers. And so with a budget that went up 3+%, to be able to drop the tax rate by almost 6 cents is a tribute to the funding mechanism. A lot of communities around the state have declining enrollment, and that really impacts tax rate.
Interesting. Elaine, anything you want to throw at the super here?
Well, I was just trying to match numbers with what I have and what you just presented. So the drop in tax rate by almost 6 cents, was that the numbers that you had going into this, or is that just what they approved?
That was the number going in.
Oh, okay.
And what's unique about this year, and actually not just this year, but it's been more accented this year, is it's less about what the budget increase is, and it's more about the metric of the equalized ed spending per pupil. And that's what the shift that voters should pay attention to, because a budget from year to year could be a flat no increase and have a tax rate spike up if the enrollment numbers go down. So that it's just a different interest that the voters should be paying attention to, and that is the cost per pupil.
And how many pupils did you go up, the equalized pupil count?
We went up, I think, about 5 students.
Okay, yeah, that's decent.
And again, in this time of declining enrollment, even to have stable enrollment is an asset. To be able to have it increase is good.
Right, I know BFA's numbers are dropping right now.
All right.
Yeah.
That's right. So Act 46, just in a minute or so, if you can briefly touch on it, was this, you're pretty impressed with Act 46? I realize we could talk about this for a long time, but was this a good piece of legislation, would you say?
Well, it creates a conversation, and a number of our board members have said, even if we do nothing, just having the conversation and looking at doing some efficiency measures on our own without changing the governance will be a benefit. So I think that any time that you kind of shake up the system a little bit, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, well put. Hey, we appreciate you checking in. Good luck with all your towns, and thanks a lot for the report.
Well, happy to do it.
Okay.
And, have a good night.
Thank you very much. Again, solid reporting there from Winton Goodrich, the superintendent, and the Franklin Northwest Supervisory Union, and the on-deck circle, Kevin Dirth from Franklin Central. But we've got a few minutes for it, so I guess the closest vote we've heard about is that Montgomery new town office building, huh? I love folks who say, my vote doesn't count. Why would I bother to vote?
Right.
I hope those people are whatever.
Yeah, noticing that just by 2 votes, Montgomery's town hall was voted down.
And guess what, for the third time? I guess that issue's been around for a while. Wow.
And so now they're kind of looking to see how they're going to fix this issue of sharing a space with the post office and just not having enough space for either organization. So.
Yeah, I know Montgomery. I told you I love Montgomery. I've never lived in Montgomery, one of my favorite towns here in Franklin County. It's a good part of the world. So again, for folks just tuning in, the big story in the St. Albans area, the unification vote, but not only approval, Elaine, overwhelming approval, I guess, in all 3 towns, or 2 towns in St. Albans City.
It looked like a 5-to-1 approval in the city, and a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 in
over 2-to-1 in Fairfield. I'm not
Yes.
sure. I'm not sure we've seen the exact St. Albans town numbers, but I guess there was decisive approval there too.
Right, and going into it, I mean, it was kind of up in the air. No one really knew exactly what was going to happen, but it seems that people read the literature and decided to go for it.
Yeah, well, you folks certainly have, I guess Michelle in particular, but you guys have done a lot of reporting on this.
Right, just trying to break it down, show what the tax incentives were, and just how they would come together and unify, and what that would look like with the board, with tax rates and all of that.
Yeah, and editor-publisher Emerson Lynn, Emerson took this issue pretty seriously. He gave this issue a lot of attention. I know it means a lot to him, so I've got to think he's very happy with those numbers.
And you couldn't miss the big sign out front of City Hall saying, "School of Unification, please vote." So,
in fact, I even wondered about that. I might have been a little surprised it was so close to walking in there. I guess I was okay, but yes, I certainly didn't miss that today.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay, we've got a Fairfield video. Lane, I guess my question is, we don't have another superintendent checking in? Later, okay.
So up next we're going to go to
I guess we're all set for this Fairfield video right now?
And that's of their town meeting day.
Okay, off to, let's see some of the video from Fairfield, and we'll be back in a bit.
Of those in favor of approving $35,000 for the support of the East Fairfield Volunteer Fire Department, set appropriation only to be paid by the town upon condition that the East Fairfield Volunteer Fire Department submit to the town by June 30th, 2016, a copy of its most recent balance sheet and bank statement for review by the town auditors. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Motion carried. All in favor of approving $15,000 in support of the Fairfield Community Center Association, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, please indicate by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Motion carried. Article 23, shall the voters approve a donation of $3,782 for the Franklin County Home Health Agency Incorporated. Previous year was $3,782. Is there a motion? So moved by Tom Harrigan, second by Bennett Dawson Bennett. Is there questions or comments on this? Recognize Dan McCoy.
Sorry, we're joking at the bump. Hi, my name's Danny McCoy, and I just wanted to say on behalf of Franklin County Home Health, we just want to thank you for your years of support in the past and your support this year. I wanted to let you know that last year there were 58 residents of the town of Fairfield that received over 1,757 visits from Home Health here in our town. Your money goes towards subsidizing the visits here in Fairfield for those who were uninsured or underinsured. Last year, Franklin County Home Health gave out over $590,000 in free care throughout Franklin County. So your money does stay right here, and I just wanted to say on behalf of the board of Franklin County Home Health, we thank you all very, very much. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Any questions or comments on this article? All right, we're ready for the question. All in favor of approving a donation of $3,782 for the Franklin County Home Health Agency Incorporated, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Motion carried.
I want to say thank you to Kendall Phelps for serving I think 5 or 6 years on the school board. She decided not to run this year, and she couldn't be here today, but we thank her, and it can be a hard job, it can be a fun job, so I'm glad she did it, and we welcome Dave Gaudette too, so thank you.
All those in favor of approving 2016 expenditures of $132,310 for the Bent Northrop Memorial Library, $19,000 of which shall be raised by taxes, and $113,310 by non-tax revenues, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please indicate by saying no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Motion carried.
On the ballot and in your town report, the projected spending per equalized pupil is listed as 1.95% over last year. It's actually 1.67%. So there was a mix-up in the central office in getting it to the town clerk. So I just wanted to make that clarification. And everything else looks correct. And our state per pupil spending, or our per pupil spending is below state average.
Hello again, everyone. Richard Copperthwaite with Michelle Monroe. More coverage for Town Meeting Day 2016. Just want to quickly mention the sidewalk issue in St. Albans City, a biggie. About a $5 million bond was passed. I guess we're hearing with about 80% approval, so about 4-1 if my math is right there. Michelle, let's go. We've got Kevin Dirth on the phone, the superintendent of the Franklin Central Supervisory Union. I know you've had a lot of dealings with Kevin. Kevin, Richard Copperthwaite here, and you got to be pretty happy with the, well, I guess I'll ask you. You happy with that unification vote today?
I'm pretty happy and gratified over there. Yeah.
Did you see that coming? We were thinking that St. Albans City, no suspense, easy approval. St. Albans Town, questionable, and maybe even Fairfield. Were you surprised with the overwhelming support?
Maybe to some degree. I think a lot of people put a lot of time into this, and I think it showed with the vote. But yes, maybe a bit surprised, but very happy.
And Kevin, we haven't gotten any official town results yet. We're hearing it was a large margin. Do you have a sense of what the margin was in the town?
Yeah, I can't give you the exact number, but I can give you a close. Somewhere around mid-1,000s to mid-600s.
So about 1,050 to 650?
I would say a 400 vote margin.
About a 400 vote margin?
That's pretty decisive.
That is pretty significant. Do you have any sense of what led to this outcome? I mean, you mentioned folks who'd worked hard. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the work that went in here?
Well, in answer to your first question, I think what led to the success, or I'm hoping, it's because it was the right thing to do. I think it made sense to a lot of people that the time has come where this unification just made sense. Mm-hmm. So that combined with the fact that there were an awful lot of board members and community members who felt strongly about this and worked very hard to make sure the information was out there for people to see, and when you had the newspaper involved and you had the communications that occurred, I think it just added up to people found it was a worthwhile thing.
And can you outline a little bit for folks what will be the next steps now?
Good question.
Well, I can't say for sure, but it would be my assumption at this point that we will have to start looking at getting the new board members together, and those members I don't know yet. As of this point, I don't have. There was a contested seat, and I don't have all that information. But we will need to, in March, get this group together, and this is what's called the transition board, and begin the process with this transition board moving forward over the year, transitioning to the consolidation.
And so
that would be the first step.
And so, as I understand it, some of the things that they'll need to do is they'll need to adopt new policies for the unified board, which should be pretty straightforward because most of the schools already have essentially the same policies, and negotiate a new contract with all a unified union in that sense, that all of the teachers currently employed by the 4 schools as well as the supervisory union will become one bargaining unit, and you'll have to negotiate with them and with the paraeducators. Is that a...
Well, it's not all, but you certainly hit a lot of that, Michelle. I actually think, I agree with you, I think the policy part will be relatively straightforward because the SU, the supervisory unit, has done an excellent job in setting policy. And I think it's just going to have to be tweaked a little bit, and maybe some name changes to take care of the policy part. I think the difficulty, or at least the challenge, will be, as you mentioned, the negotiation. They will be setting up a new budget, because the next budget that's coming forward will be a combined budget of all of the schools. So, and I hope this new board will be taking some time at the beginning, getting into the schools, learning about all the schools, learning about the players, and doing a bunch of research, which is very exciting that this will all occur.
Kevin, the St. Albans Town School budget went down. The SATEX budget went down, though.
Yeah.
Not good news for you.
No, it'll be interesting to find out. I'm hoping we can find more information why and where we go from there, and we'll have to get back together and with that information put up a new budget.
And I think you mentioned there was, as you mentioned, a contested race for the supervisory, the new school
unified
board. And again, you don't have those results on who won that.
Yeah, at the last I'd heard, did not, because you have those votes are commingled.
Yeah.
Between the 3 towns, and they had not got to that point yet. So.
Okay.
We may not learn that until tomorrow. There's that contested race, and there's also an open seat.
Open seat, yeah. Hopefully, maybe one of those folks who didn't. I know Steve LaRosa said, "Hey, folks, why don't you vote in?" I guess hoping for himself, but vote in one of the candidates who was running.
And counting all those write-ins will definitely slow it down.
That'll take some time.
One thing that will definitely be needed is that the new unified district will need a name. We've gone forward without a name other than sort of the Franklin Central Unified District. So have you been hearing any suggestions for a name, Kevin?
Not yet. I think we weren't really sure this was going to happen, and now that it has, we've got some neat things to do, and that's one of them. And I'm not sure how we want to go about that quite yet. I want to talk to the board, but I think we could probably come up with something more creative than Franklin Central.
And then we should have a contest, name the new school district.
Maybe. Franklin
There you
Northeast is
go.
calling theirs the Cold Hollow School District, which I think has a nice ring to it. So.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah,
Time will tell.
That's a thought. Kevin, how many? There were a number of other unification votes across the state. Were there some other votes statewide? Did you hear how the other ones went or not?
I have not.
No.
I have been asked to send information down to certain media outlets, and I've actually asked them if they knew to send something back. So far, I haven't received anything. So I don't know how the other mergers have come out yet.
Right. Well, I'm sure you're going to have your hands full with the one you have right here.
But it's going to be a handful that's worthwhile doing. It'll be fun and challenging, and I think will really make a difference.
And as Michelle and I mentioned before, boy, this is a vote that almost didn't happen today.
Isn't that ironic? Yes. It went from not happening at all to passing pretty significantly.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, how did the other school districts do in their budgets? We haven't heard anything about the city's school budget, the Fairfield budget, or the BFA budget. Do you have a sense of how those have done?
I know that the city school budget passed significantly, and up to this point, that's all I've heard. And the town went down, but I'm not sure about Fairfield. And when I was at the city hall, they were taking the ballots, the sheriff was taking the ballots over to BFA to count. So that's probably going to take a little while.
And do you know who's counting the Unified Union District School Board members? Where's that? Who's going to handle that counting of that? Is one of the towns doing it?
I don't know exactly, Michelle. I do understand that they're going to, I believe they're counting in their individual
towns, and then they're going to add them up.
Districts first, and then they're just going to add them up. That's the way I understand it, but I haven't been told exactly.
Okay.
Anyway, anything else for the super there, Michelle?
Not at this point. I know we'll be seeing a lot of each other as we cover the work of the new school district board, the new Unified Union District Board, I should say.
Yes, no, doesn't that have a nice sound to it?
It's a very exciting change, that's for certain.
Kevin, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for checking in. Good luck with the new Unified School District.
Thanks, sister. Take care.
All right, take care, Kevin.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So again, at this point, a lot of results for the record we don't have, but the one school budget that we know went down, St. Albans Town, we're not aware of any others.
Not yet.
And again, the Montgomery, the new town office building goes down by two votes, but those are the only significant money issues we're aware of that have been defeated.
Yes, except for
a lot out there.
The alteration in the Highgate budget.
Thank you. I shouldn't. The third one was the capital budget took a pretty big hit in Highgate.
It did.
So three money issues that we know of that went down or mostly went down.
Yeah, because Highgate had sought to adopt a capital improvement plan that would have spread some needed capital improvements out over the next 5 years, and it did mean a substantial investment in funds, and voters balked.
Yeah, I thought I was going to get immersed in that, but the day played out differently. But yeah, so at least three significant money issues went down. But boy, just kind of a lack of contests in the St. Albans area, which we talked about. But a few contests again, if you're especially tuning in late. Sheldon Town Clerk's contest here, and we have a new town clerk in Sheldon with Kim Dufresne defeating longtime town clerk Paulette Bocash. But again, didn't seem like too many incumbents faced challenges today, and in some cases, just not a lot of contests.
Except in Montgomery, where they did have an incumbent who was
so there was defeated, an incumbent defeated.
And that took multiple ballots.
Oh, okay.
There were multiple ballots. And in Bakersfield, we do have some results there. Their school budget was approved, $205 to $145. That's a $3.5 million budget. And David Ovett I actually honestly can't tell you off the top of my head if David Ovett was an incumbent. But the select board seat for 3 years in Bakersfield, the race was David Ovett versus Mark Robert, and Ovett won 210 to 114.
Okay.
So we do have a couple more results from some of our towns, but we are still waiting on the vast majority of the towns, and I think it's just a factor of turnout being up with this being a presidential primary, and of course one of our own being in the presidential primary.
Yeah, speaking of whom, I think we have a key person monitoring those results out there. I think 87% for Bernie in Vermont, I think is the percentage I heard, but yeah, Bernie Sanders romping to victory in Vermont. And again, you mentioned he did win Oklahoma.
He won Oklahoma as well.
That's right. What about Massachusetts? I think was very, very tight.
I have not heard Massachusetts results yet.
That was the word I got maybe about 20 minutes ago. Very close in the Bay State.
I can tell you where the results are at this moment. Also, we do have the results on Georgia's school budget, and that passed 707 to 601.
And there was a contested select board race in Georgia. My guess is that the two incumbents might well have won. Have you got that?
They did. Tara Wright
Paul Jansen and Tara Wright defeating David Vincent Sr.
Yes, and they were both re-elected to one-year seats.
In fact, the vice chair of the Georgia Select Board is Mr. Matt Crawford, a former Messenger scribe.
Yes.
That's a good man, real solid guy.
They also appealed a cap on they rejected the repeal of a cap on their capital reserve fund. 681 to 560 for the school, for the school district in Georgia. And you asked for Massachusetts results.
What I got was pretty tight race before.
I'm waiting for them to load.
Both Bernie and Hillary. Bernie spoke in Milton, Mass, right outside Boston yesterday. I think Hillary was in Boston.
They've been really following each other around the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been very interesting to see that Bernie morph from a guy who was, just traveling around in his little car to a man with a Secret Service entourage and buses with his name painted on them, full of journalists following him around.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. And of course, in the case of Bernie, which most people know, if he's unsuccessful in his presidential quest, let's see, 5 minutes, right? We do have a video coming up, Lane? No video.
No.
Okay. No more video. Okay.
Just a rundown in 5.
What was I just getting on? I got distracted there.
Something about Bernie and
Bernie doesn't have to worry. Obviously, if Bernie is not successful in his presidential quest, he will remain Vermont's junior U.S. Senator. Of course, he's not up for re-election until 2018.
Yes.
Of course, Senator Leahy is up this year. What a surprise. I don't think I've heard of any Republicans who are going to try to unseat him. Imagine that.
I had heard that Scott Milne did some polling.
Oh, is that right? No, geez, I'm sure those were close numbers. Interesting. Not to beat up on Scott Milne, the guy who came very close to being our governor.
He did.
Talk about one of the most, I'm telling you, that race and Bernie's 1981 mayoral race upset win in Burlington are maybe the two most amazing races in my long Vermont career. I mean, Scott Milne almost knocked off Peter Shumlin. The governor was going to be a great race for, again, the statewide races have been kind of lost in the shuffle so far, but that'll change over time.
And I think it's going to take a little while for those races to really take shape, for us to really get a key sense of how those are going.
Some talk that Chap Smith might possibly get back into a statewide race, although I heard a radio interview with him, I guess on VPR the other day. He sure didn't sound like a statewide candidate, but didn't totally rule it out, of course, dealing with his wife's breast cancer situation, understandably, obviously.
Yeah, it certainly changed the shape of the Democratic race when he opted out. And it's fascinating because there's such demand to see voting results that we actually cannot get in. I cannot log into websites where the voting results are for the primaries. They are just sitting here attempting to load as everyone is attempting to.
Well, Bernie, again, overwhelming victory for Bernie Sanders. And on the Republican side, it sounded like Trump ahead of John Kasich, likely to come in second in Vermont.
And Clinton did win American Samoa. where
Oh,
they
is that right?
caucus
One
tonight.
American Samoa?
She won American
That's
Samoa,
interesting.
4 delegates.
So this town, you've covered a bunch of town meeting days. Michelle,
I have.
anything drastically different about this day than any others? I mean, the issues obviously
Yeah.
changed to some extent, but in
I'll
a
be-
presidential primary this year.
The presidential primary, and certainly having one of our own in the presidential primary
Sure.
changed that.
Yeah.
And I would say the focus on education is kind of, it's a refreshing discussion, I think, that we're having about our schools and the future of our schools and what education needs to look like and what's a reasonable amount of money to spend on that, and how can we best serve students around the state. Because one of the things that I think folks don't realize is that we have some smallish schools, but not really small schools in Franklin County, not by Vermont standards.
Yeah.
A school with 130 kids in a K-6 is not a small school by Vermont standards. We have schools where there's 1 kid in the 6th grade and 3 kids in the 5th grade. That's Isle of Mont. You know, we have schools with fewer than 50 students in them. And so statewide, I think we have some real questions to ask about how we serve our students and what our students need, and can we provide them with the skills to succeed later in life when they can't learn communication skills and other transferable skills because there's no one for them to communicate with. They're the only person in the class. And so we really need to take a hard look at education and what it's costing us and how we can best serve our students.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is an important conversation for us to be having. And we are starting to have that. And certainly every I was at town meeting in Sheldon today, and people were sitting behind me and talking about, hey, what are our options under Act 46? What's our town thinking about? What can we do?
Yeah, I've heard some of the same, again, questions in Highgate. Like I said, the superintendent who we talked to, Winton Goodrich, had a lot of questions about Act 46. Okay, I guess I'm going to do our rundown thing, and we'll come back, and I guess wrap things up unless we hear otherwise. Anyway, so we'll give you a rundown momentarily here of town meeting day results, starting in Fairfield. Again, the big unification vote, Act 46 approval in Fairfield, 376 to 152. In St. Albans City, to overwhelmingly approve, 1,070 to 299. And also approved in St. Albans Town, although we don't have the numbers. In Bakersfield, Select Board contested race, David Ovett defeating Mark Robert, 210 to 114. Also in Bakersfield, a school budget of about $3.5 million, up a little over 3%, 205 to 145 approval for the Bakersfield school budget. In Enosburg, all articles passed, including a fire truck and that being a pumper, also a highway truck. Let's see, the fire truck approved 386 to 57, and the highway truck approved 180 to 62, with a much smaller turnout on the highway truck. Highgate, all articles passed. We've talked about some of the articles here. The school budget passed on about 2 to 1. All articles passed, we should say, except for a little confusing, a little misleading. The budget capital plan was cut by $400,000, which is to say most of it was removed from the budget, from the town budget. Again, in Highgate, the school budget, as I mentioned, an almost $5 million budget, up about 5% approved, 97 to 54, with a little over 12,600 per pupil costs here. Montgomery, all articles passed except for Article 1, the new town office building, defeated 192 to 190. Price tag for that was pegged, I think it was reduced from the last time around, pegged at a little under $600,000, so it looks like more work for Montgomery officials on that issue. In Sheldon, definitely some activity in Sheldon, and one of the issues was building for a historical museum, a $40,000 money item, that was approved 74 to 32 in favor of that. And we had a couple of contested races, which we've been talking about. Kimberly Dufresne, the new Sheldon town clerk, defeating the incumbent Paulette Bocage, 76 to 51. And a contested race for a 3-year term in the select board, Mark Churchill defeating Paul Talley, 97 to 23. And also in Sheldon, the school budget of about $6 million, up a little over 1%, $12,180 per pupil. Spending approval 302 to 80, so decisive approval for the Sheldon school budget. In St. Albans City, that sidewalk issue, about a $5 million bond issue, overwhelming approval, 1,129 to 293.
That too many people showed up, so then they had to print more.
And also in St. Albans City, no contested races among those re-elected. Mayor Liz Gamache to a third two-year term. St. Albans Town, school budget. This is the only budget in Franklin County that we're aware of that's been defeated. There may be others, but only one we know of. The school budget in the town, a little over $11 million, up a little under 4%, defeated, 888 to 814. In Swanton Village, all articles passed. And I guess that's going to do it for our rundown. Looks like we have a few more minutes left here. Michelle, anything we haven't covered for a while that comes to mind?
Well, actually, it occurred to me that when we were talking about Highgate, something that's not on our ballot, but Highgate is once again leading in the vote tally, as I understand it, in the Craft Hockeyville contest, which they won $20,000 last year. So that voting is continuing for another week or two. So if folks want to go on and support the Highgate Arena project, they should do that on the Craft Hockeyville website. Certainly there's still work to be done on the Highgate Arena, and the funds there are potentially $150,000 if they win the whole shebang.
Interesting. Yep, I saw flyers of the Highgate meeting on that. Yeah, the folks, that's been an interesting story going on for a number of years. Of course, we go back to the first vote when folks in Highgate, Franklin, and Swanton voted on a bond issue, an approval in Highgate and Franklin, but not in Swanton, and then Highgate decided to go it alone. It was, I guess, just a year ago at town meeting.
Yes, yep.
It was a very close vote, but Highgate, just a vote in Highgate with approval for a much smaller bond issue. But yeah, the Highgate Arena, there's been a lot of work. It's been a nice effort. Friend of mine, Kim Gates Maynard in Franklin, has been certainly one of the spearheaders of that project. But yeah, it means a lot to a lot of folks in Highgate, I know. In fact, of course, I can't think of his name. The new Highgate Select Board member who was elected today hadn't been on the board, but I'm hearing he's a big Maha background and a big Highgate Arena. Unfortunately, I think we mentioned his name. I don't have I can punch up Highgate. I think maybe Mr. LaRock. Sorry.
Oh, yes.
I'm hearing he's a big Maha Highgate Arena proponent.
They've had some Paulette Tatro, who was also very involved in the Highgate project, join the board last year.
A good numbers person, of course. Paulette, the longtime business manager for the MVU district.
Yes, she was.
Saw Paulette today. Didn't have a chance to speak with her.
And that's also another school where we haven't yet heard about either the football, the $10,000 for the football, the $100,000 for their capital reserves or their school budget.
Good point. That's an issue we should have mentioned. In fact, was there a long letter in the Messenger just today or yesterday about from an MVU student in favor of just touting Highgate football. My good friend Rick the Nighthawk Tatro, who will be hosting our sports show tomorrow night, is a huge backer, has been to a lot of the club football games and thinks that would be a great thing for MVU. What's your sense? Did you have a prediction on the MVU football vote article?
It's really hard for me to predict. I'm not sure to what extent having the team for the last 2 years has worn down the opposition. And because certainly there was a lot of opposition initially, so I don't know to what extent actually having the team and being able to go and play and hearing from the students who've become involved.
I forget how much money was involved. I'm forgetting.
10,000.
10,000.
$10,000 for the varsity team.
Not a huge amount of money.
No, and it was Joshua LaRoque, yes, who was elected
LaRoque.
to that Highgate Select Board seat. He was unopposed.
I think with still one open seat, unless someone got 30 write-in votes today, which I doubt happened, but there may be one open seat on that 5-member Highgate Select Board.
Mark Zeb Maskell was also elected to a 2-year seat on the board.
Oh, well, I guess he got it with write-ins. I mentioned Zeb before.
He was a write-in.
No one's more active at any town meeting in Franklin County than Mr. Zeb Maskell. In fact, he actually, and the motion was approved, I guess under Robert's Rules of Order, you're probably way ahead of me on this. I guess you can just, a person at a town meeting can just ask 2 questions, or 0, 1, or 2, no more than 2 on any particular article. And so Zeb made a motion today, I want to ask more questions. Let's kick this up to 5. And that was approved, I guess just on the school side of things. So Looks like we have 2 minutes left. So I guess he did win that other seat on write-in votes,
He
apparently.
did win that on write-in votes.
Interesting. Down
Yes.
to a couple. Let me just thank, before we wrap things up right here, thanks to all the folks who did give us information, the town clerks, the election officials. Thank you for all the help you gave us. Thanks for our guy laying out here, standing in front of us for 2 hours filming us, and the folks doing all the hard work in back, Elizabeth, Joanne, Paul, Ian, forgetting anybody, kill me, but thanks to everybody who made our life easier. And your colleague, nice to meet Elaine Ezerins in the Messenger. And Michelle, again, great job. You're really on top of this stuff. You folks have done some real nice reporting on this. But
thank you.
Anyway, pretty active day with the primary. A lot of big issues. I mean, just think of all the money, all the budgets added up today. We're talking, I made a reference to $100 million plus. Maybe it's closer to $200 million if you're talking municipal and school budgets just in Franklin County. It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. And I hadn't actually thought of it in those terms, but that's true.
Yeah, down to 1 minute. So again, just going back, the unification vote in St. Albans, again, passed easily in St. Albans City, St. Albans Town, and Fairfield. So that moves ahead. A few money issues went down. Again, the St. Albans Town school budget, the Montgomery Newtown office building, and the cut in the capital budget in Highgate. Those were the 3 main money items that didn't fare so well, but got to think most school officials and municipal officials probably pretty happy with the day.
I'm guessing Dom Cloud's pretty ecstatic with that sidewalk vote.
Big approval for the sidewalk vote. Yeah, I'm a St. Albans City resident. Yeah, I can look forward to that as well. Anyway, Michelle, thanks a lot, and again, thanks to Elaine. Great job. Thanks to all the folks doing all the hard work out there. Thanks for watching us here on Northwest Access TV. That'll do it for our coverage of Town Meeting Day 2016. Good night.